Hello farmers and welcome to another episode of The Harvest Season. My name is Al and I'm here today to talk to you about cottagecore games. Woo! It's just me this week because the planned episode had to be rescheduled just because of some issues in conflicts and stuff like that. So these things happen. Obviously you don't know what you're missing, but we will do that episode this year sometime. You're not going to miss out on what we've planned for that one, and the special host who will be there for that episode. You'll find out soon, don't worry. In the meantime, I'm going to do this solo episode I'm literally recording this 2 hours after the Game Award nominations came out, and there's some interesting stuff in there. There are obviously a few cottagecore and farming games. Farming. There's a few cottagecore games in the list, which we're going to chat about. And I also think it's interesting, some of the categories. I'm not sure which of these categories happened and which ones have not happened in previous years, but I have some thoughts on them, so I think I'll go over that. Obviously before that we have a bunch of news. Transcripts are available in the show notes and on the website if you need them. Well, they're there whether you need them or not, but you can go there for them. We're going to talk about some news, but before that, Al, what have you been up to? Well, thank you, Al, for asking. I have finished up Spider-Man 2. I have 100%ed that game and got the Platinum... What's it called? Trophy. That's what they're called. The Platinum Trophy. I don't often pay attention to trophies because obviously they don't have them on Switch. So I don't get them for any of those games. And I don't tend to pay attention to them on Steam very often. Maybe I will start doing that. I don't know. I think part of the problem is a lot of the trophies for games is a lot of them will just be do this, whatever, right? You get, once you've completed the game, you got a few things to do, right? In Spider-Man 2, there was get all the suits and do all the upgrades, blah, blah, blah. And obviously all the story stuff. But then there just ended up being random ones. One of the ones in Spider-Man 2 was sneak. I can't remember what they're called, but when you do the sneak on someone when you're in sneaky mode, stealth mode, you do a stealth move and it ties them up without alerting other people. And it's do that 25 times from a web, because you can do a web line in Spider-Man 2 and you do it between two buildings. And it's do 25 of them from a web line. And you're okay, these things just end up being a bit weird. Why? It just feels sometimes the trophies, those kinds of trophies just exist just to increase the number of trophies. It's what's the point in having these random trophies? It's in Fall Guys, it's jump 10,000 times. Why? I don't... So it's if trophies were just once you'd 100%ed the game, you had all the trophies, I would do it more often, I think. I've just 100%ed Mario Wonder, and obviously if they had trophies in Switch, I would probably have all the trophies. It just seems like such a weird idea. It's you can 100% the game, but you don't have all the trophies because these weird random conditions that you have to get all the trophies. But anyway, that's beside the point. So it was my first Platinum Trophy. That's what they call it. When you get all of the trophies, you get then a Platinum Trophy. It's very funny. I find it very funny because you look in the list of trophies and it's the top one is the Platinum one, obviously, which is the one you get when you get all the trophies, and it says get all the trophies, but it's you can't get all the trophies without getting the last trophy, right? It should say get all other trophies, but it doesn't say that. It says, in fact, I'll read the exact words to you to prove my point. It says, and I quote, collect all trophies, right? Not collect all other trophies, collect all trophies. And I find that funny because it's you can't get all trophies without getting that trophy. It doesn't really matter. Apparently nearly 20% of all Spider-Man 2 players have gotten all the trophies. So it feels less special when it's 20%. So it feels like a lot of people. Anyway, that just seems like a high number of people. I'm surprised that so many people have got all those trophies. Whereas Sonic Frontiers, which I'm just about to start playing, only 5% of players have got all the trophies. Anyway, trophies are a weird thing, and I think I want them on Switch, but I actually don't know if I want them on Switch, because do I want to feel the need to do them? I think I'm getting off topic. Trophies. Weird. I completed Spider-Man 2. That was fun. I enjoyed that game. It's a very good game. Coincidentally, or not coincidentally, it got one of the nominations for Game of the Year for the Game Awards. So, it's obviously a good game. I liked it. I thought it was really good. I think they did a really good merging of the original Spider-Man and Miles Morales and adding new stuff into both of those games, but also having the two players. I really liked that. Not only that, but you play as like 5 different characters in the game at different points, and it doesn't feel like any of them were terrible. Still not a fan of the Mary Jane sections, but they made them less bad. So I've been playing that. I have started playing the new round of Mario Kart levels. I haven't done much of that, but I do want to get them done because they're fun. Apparently I hadn't finished doing the previous one, so I need to finish them up as well. But I'm nearly there. I've done all bar the last 2, this one and the previous one. So I need to get them done. What else have I done? I've started playing Spirit Tea, which I believe will be out by the time this episode comes out. But I have started playing that. I played a number of different things. Yeah. Don't think there was anything big other than that. I have been playing one game, but I don't want to spoil that because that was meant to be this week's episode. So I'll keep that one as a secret until we get round to that. In addition to games, I've also been watching some things. So obviously Loki Season 2 finished this week, so I very much enjoyed that finale. I went to see The Marvels on Friday as well, and I very much enjoyed that. I thought it was a very good film. Obviously it has some flaws, most films do, but I thought overall it was a very enjoyable film. I have also been watching the X-Men 92, continuing my watch of that, and I am, I think, halfway through season 3. There's 5 seasons of that. Yeah, I think that's about everything I've been up to. Well, other than, just life things. So I'm going to go talk through some news. So first off, we have Research Story version 0.6. That is out now. So if you have been playing that game and you want to go see some more content, that's there. They have added 4 new romanceables, so they're now up to 10 romanceables in the game. They say they've added 800 plus dialogue lines. I do find it funny when they say plus, right? Especially in something like this, because it's like you have the number that you've added. You can see the number because you've coded them. So you could just put the actual number in, but people like to round these things. But then they're like, but we want to make sure that people know it's more than that. So we put the plus on at the end. So the 4 they've added are Ira, Luke, Ming, and Yan Yan. I think the character art in this game looks quite good. Presumably these are the same. The link that I'm looking at is in the show notes. This is their Steam update. The images that we see at the top, I presume are their portraits when you're talking to them, because I don't actually see anything else. And I've still not played this game because there's too many games. They've also added the ability to track your relationship progress in the friendship tab. You can sell your items at the general store. Presumably they just had like a shipping box on the farm, like most farming games. They have improved the map. They've added table decor. They've added a bunch of new items. And obviously a bunch of fixes and smaller changes. They're also planning one more update for this year, 0.7, which presumably will come out in December in that case. I think it's impressive if they managed to get that out in the last month and a half of the year, which will include a Winter Festival, creature variants, more creatures, crops and fish, more content for the mines, and hopefully Steam achievements. That's what they say. Next we have the Lens Island Harvest Moon update. This is coming out on the 22nd of November. So in 1 week. This will include defensive towers, which is quite interesting. Presumably that's to stop mobs attacking you when you're not paying attention to them. Town advancement. Harvest moons, as described by the name. It says, brave the harvest moon to reap the rewards of high-yielding crops. So that sounds like something where when the Harvest Moon is out, if you do something, because they're showing a little picture of someone outside in the moonlight watering their plants. So if you go and water them while the Harvest Moon is out, you get better crops. That's what it sounds like. And portals, a new way of fast travel to every town. So that sounds like a good, interesting update. I still need to play that game as well. Potion Permit have announced that they're releasing on Android and iOS. That is coming next year on the 6th of February. So if you really wanted to play this game, but you were like, I'm not playing this until it's on my phone, there you go. You'll be able to do it in February. Probably not much more to say about that. Next we have Distant Bloom. They have a new release window, so it was meant to come out this year, but they've had some issues. They say due to unforeseen circumstances, we had to temporarily halt progress on the project. However, we're delighted to share that we've overcome all challenges and are now in the final stretch dedicated to delivering the best possible game. So that's good. It's coming out next year, Q1 of next year, so probably March. I could have been mean there and said probably April. But next we have tomorrow, as I'm recording, so on the 14th of November, which will be yesterday when you're hearing this. Don't know why I gave you so many different ways of describing that. Is the newest Nintendo Indie Showcase. So presumably we'll cover anything that's that's announced in that. We'll cover that on the next episode. So if you don't want to watch it, but you want to know anything coming farming or cottagecore related, we'll let you know. And the final piece of news outside of the Game Awards stuff is that Farming Simulator Kids is a new game coming to phones and Switch next year. The Farming Simulator, I'm just going to read out some of their copy from this. The Farming Simulator family of games is growing. Let us introduce the freshest and soon to be born member, Farming Simulator Kids. Coming soon to Nintendo Switch and mobile devices in spring 2024. Pre-orders will be available in the near future. Stay tuned. Farming Simulator Kids is an easy-to-play game suited for all ages and introduces the growing generation to the colourful and fun world of farming and blooming nature. It educates and entertains them in a child-friendly and sheltered environment. Take a look at the highlights below. There's a video as well, a trailer, which I'm not sure how much of this is actual gameplay. Obviously, it's showing a lot of the artwork. It's a very colourful artwork. It definitely looks much more like a kid's game, right? And I'm going to presume that the gameplay is much simpler and more like a normal farming simulator than Farming Simulator. I find this interesting because part of what Farming Simulator is a realistic farming sim, right? They're not trying to be like Stardew Valley or Harvest Moon. They're trying to be, this is the most realistic you can get with farming simulators. But then if you're trying to make it more accessible for children, it's obviously going to be less realistic. So I find this interesting. Is this just an educational tool to educate kids about animals? Is it just a game? Is it a John Deere marketing exercise? Because they do say they have vehicles and tools by John Deere. What's the purpose of this? That's my question. Is it going to be more realistic than most farming games? But obviously it can't be anywhere near as realistic as Farming Simulator normally is. But that's their whole thing. So I'm very intrigued to see how this goes. I wonder if my kid would be interested in playing this or not. We'll have to see. It comes out next year. I like the graphics. I like the look of it. I'm just very intrigued as to why it's Farming Simulator that's making this. Yeah, quite an interesting balance. The realistic Farming Simulator and a kid's game. I guess we'll see what they do. Okay, that's all the news. Next, I want to talk about the Game Awards. So first of all, we have 4 awards that have cottagecore games or games that we've talked about, right? I don't want to argue about genres. I know I'm the only person on this podcast, but I'm sure I could still argue about genres with myself. And I'm sure some of you would want to listen to that, but I'm not going to do that. We're just going to say these are games that we have talked about on the podcast. So there are 4 awards that have those games in them. So the first one is Games for Impact, which is about games that are trying to do something positive in the world. So there are 2 games nominated for this award that we've talked about, and they are Chia, which is the game based on New Caledonia, and Terra Nil, which is the reverse city builder, I guess you would call it. There are 4 other games in this. Venba, I think that was about it was a cooking game, I think. I remember seeing that. I think it was a cooking game about a specific culture and their food. That's all I can remember about that. There's also Goodbye Volcano High, Chance of Senar, and A Space for the Unbound. None of those 3 I've heard of at all, so I don't know what they're like, but very interesting. I think the Games for Impact is an interesting one because obviously there's a debate to be had as to how much impact you can have when making a game, but I think it's always good to try these things. I certainly think that Terra Nil have done some good, not least because they have definitely donated money to things from some of their profits, and I think it's, you've heard me and you've definitely heard Johnny and I think Cody as well talk about how we like when games try and do something other than just kind of your standard capitalist farming game, because we don't want to get stuck in a specific idea of what society is and should be. So this is fun that it's doing something different, and obviously Chia is showing another different way to kind of live with society, to live with nature, and about a whole different culture that most people in the world won't be aware of. Obviously, many will, because it's very, in some ways it's similar to other cultures as well in terms of how they treat nature and how they interact with the world around us. But obviously those cultures are way outnumbered by the kind of European colonialist world that has been created and ended up with, just a huge amount of capitalism, just trying to take as much as possible from the world to make money for the sake of it. And it's nice to see some games doing different things. So that's Games for Impact. The next one is mobile games. There are 2 games in mobile games that we have covered or have talked about. And they are Terra Nil, again, and Hello Kitty Island Adventure. I think if you had told me that in 2023, one of the Game Awards would have a Hello Kitty game in it, I would be very surprised by that, because it's quite wild, the idea that a Hello Kitty game can be good enough to actually get nominated for a Game Award. It's best mobile game. It's not like it's Game of the Year, but still, like, the 5 games are Terra Nil, Hello Kitty Island Adventure, Honkai Star Rail, Monster Hunter Now, and Final Fantasy 7 Ever Crisis, right? I haven't played Monster Hunter Now. I don't know how good it actually is. I know that Terra Nil is good. I have heard a lot of stuff about people liking Honkai Star Rail. And Final Fantasy confuses me. This is Final Fantasy 7. Are we not on like 16 now? Very confusing. I don't know, but people like Final Fantasies, right? So it's wild that Hello Kitty Island Adventure is up there now. A Hello Kitty game nominated for a Game Award. Crazy. We also have Best Indie Game, or Best Independent Game is the official title. And the 2 games that we've covered or talked about, I keep saying covered, but we haven't covered them in so much. We've covered one in detail and one not in, and we've talked about one. And that's Dredge, which we've covered, and Dave the Diver, What a year for sea-based games, apparently. The other ones are Viewfinder, Sea of Stars, and Cocoon. And I have heard very good things about Cocoon and Sea of Stars. I have not heard of Viewfinder. But yeah, so that's good company for those two to be in. And the final one that has a game that we have covered, that is Best Debut Indie Game. This one is specifically called Indie, not Independent. And Dredge is in that one. Interestingly, also Cocoon and Viewfinder, who were in the Best Indie Game, are there. Venba, which was in the Games for Impact, is there. And the final game is Pizza Tower, which I know a lot of people like. I have on my list to play, but I haven't played yet. So there's an interest. I find it interesting that a Best Debut Indie, because presumably most of the time the idea of that is the Best Debut Indie is not going to be as good as, or the best indie, the best first games from indie studios are not going to be as good as the actual best indie games of the year. But in this case, they've got 3 in both categories. So it's going to be interesting to see. Presumably the same game shouldn't win both, but like if you're saying that, let's say Cocoon wins Best Indie Game, then surely it's also the Best Debut Indie Game. And that feels weird to me, but be that as it may. So those are the 4 awards that have nominations of games that we've covered or talked about in some way. There's a couple of other things I wanted to talk about. So first of all, they have a Best VR/AR game section now, which, interesting that we've got to that point now. I haven't played any of those games because, I mean, the only VR game I continue to play is Beat Saber, and I will continue to play that until they stop making new ones for it. And even then, I'll probably continue. I think it's interesting we've got to the point where they have that award now. They also have an Innovation in Accessibility Award, which I think is a really good thing to do. I haven't had the time, because I needed to record this episode tonight, I haven't had the time to look at why each of these games have been nominated for this section. But I think it is interesting that we have a decent number of games doing new and exciting things for accessibility. So those are Diablo 4, Forza Motorsport. Does that new game, does it not have a number? That's really annoying. Hi-Fi Rush, Marvel's Spider-Man 2, Mortal Kombat 1, and Street Fighter 6. So interesting that there's 5 of them are AAA games and one of them is an indie game. So I mean, it's good that big games are doing new things for accessibility, but I really want them to detail what it is that the games have done with accessibility that means that they should be in that category. And when they decide the winner, I want them to really justify that. Like, I don't want them to be giving an award there just for the sake of doing it, and you're like, well, nobody's done anything really great, but you're done the best, but it's just not amazing. I don't want that. I want you to like properly justify why you are giving this award to this game, and properly justify why any of these games are in this. I watched the video and I didn't notice them saying anything about it other than just listing them, which they did for each category. Obviously, they didn't go into lots of detail, but when the actual Game Awards happens, I really hope that they justify it and they don't just kind of brush over it. I think it's really good that they're bringing this award here because it is making people more aware of these things. I had no idea that these games had done something new in accessibility, and so it's good that they're bringing that to our attention. But I hope they make it more. I hope they give it more information to us and not just be like, oh yeah, this is the best in accessibility, right? No, tell us why. Tell us why. Give us a good reason for it. I also find it funny. I looked at the list of most anticipated game and not particularly anticipating any of these games, which is funny. We've got Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is the second part of the remake of Final Fantasy VII. We've got Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, which is the next Like a Dragon game. There's Star Wars Outlaws. I had not even heard of that. I'm not sure what type of game this is. I suspect I probably did see this trailer when it came out and then forgot all about it. It's an open world game. Not really seeing any gameplay. It's all just cutscenes. So I can see, I guess, why people are excited about that. I don't know whether I would be or not. Oh, they did release some gameplay after the trailer came out. Looks like you've got driving on hover bikes. You've got some shooting, some running. I suspect I would like this more than the Jedi Fallen Order games, because the reason I didn't like those games is they felt very formulaic and linear, and I didn't really feel like anything mattered in those games. The combat wasn't great, which I suspect it's hard to do good combat with a lightsaber in general, but it could be really good. Making it an open world game and making the combat shooting probably removes both of those issues, but I don't know. I've never been a huge fan of shooters. I wonder if there's more combat than just shooting. The traversal looks fine. It does look like there's different types of guns and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see. I certainly am not like, oh yes, this is my most anticipated game. My point is that the final one is Tekken 8. Like, I look at this list of games. I know that a lot of people are excited about Hades 2. Sure, fine. The rest of it, I'm like, I'm certainly not anticipating any of these games. So it's just funny that we got a list of 5 of the most anticipated game, and none of them are ones that I'm excited about. I mean, that doesn't mean it's bad. Like, I suspect I'm in the minority in a lot of things in terms of what I like in games, and so that's fine. I just find it funny that they've got 5 games, none of which I'm particularly excited about. And the Game of the Year nominations are interesting to me. There's some obvious ones that I was pretty sure would be there. So we've got Spider-Man 2, we've got Tears of the Kingdom. I definitely expected both of those to be in. I had a pretty good feeling that Baldur's Gate 3 would be in it, even though I've not played it myself. I have thought that maybe Super Mario Bros. Wonder would be in it. So those 4, I was reasonably confident about those 4. I did not expect Resident Evil 4 and Alan Wake 2 to be there, but they are there as well. I feel like all of a sudden I started hearing about Alan Wake 2 over the last couple of weeks. Not sure why. Did it just come out? I've seen a lot of references to it. It came out on the 27th of October, so that's probably why. I didn't see anything about it before its release, and then I just saw a lot of it afterwards. So I think it's just interesting, like normally when there's a big game coming out, I see a lot of information about it just before the game comes out, and then for the next couple of weeks after the game comes out as well. But this one, I feel like it just suddenly happened. Also the same with Baldur's Gate 3. I didn't hear much about it until like a couple of days before release, and then suddenly it was everywhere. Resident Evil 4, I think, is also a remake, which is interesting. I wonder how often we've had remakes in the Game of the Year nominations. There we go. Also funny, how many categories are like just almost a subset of the Game of the Year. So the best game direction is Spider-Man 2, Tears of the Kingdom, Super Mario Wonder, Baldur's Gate 3, and Alan Wake 2. So it's basically just the Game of the Year nominations, but not Resident Evil 4. So, which is funny because it's like, yeah, I guess it makes sense that like I suspect Resident Evil 4 not going to win Game of the Year then, right? Because if any of those games, and all of those games, according to the Game Awards, have better game direction than Resident Evil 4, surely it shouldn't be the Game of the Year, then one of those should. So it's funny when you have something that's like, this is like a part of a game, and we're saying that almost all of the Game of the Year nominations are the best ones of this, but not one. I just find that interesting. It's like basically the same award now. And the best action adventure game is 4 of the Game of the Year nominations plus Jedi Survivor, Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Surely that's not the best action adventure game if the other 4 are also Game of the Year nominations. I don't know. I may well be thinking about this differently to them. Like maybe when they say best action adventure game, they do say this is the best action adventure part of it, whereas the Game of the Year is the best overall game. But I feel like if you're the best game, if you're the Game of the Year, then you're also the best action adventure game if you're an action adventure game, right? Like it just doesn't make any sense to me that those two things wouldn't end up being the same thing. I also need to look into what action adventure means and what action means, because they have 2 separate sections, best action adventure game and best action game. Best adaptation also amused me because it's like The Last of Us, which was a fantastic TV series, Super Mario Bros. Movie, which was a very good film, and then Gran Turismo, which was an okay film, Twisted Metal, which I've not heard anything since it came out, right? People seem to be excited about it in theory, but then nobody seems to have talked about it afterwards, and Castlevania Nocturne, which I had literally never heard of before this. Yeah. I feel like The Last of Us should win that. Mario might win it. But maybe one of the other three is... Oh, certainly Gran Turismo shouldn't win it. Maybe one of the two that I've not seen is actually better. Who knows? Yeah, so that is the Game Award nominations. Well, the ones that I care about. There's obviously more in the list. I will obviously have a link to that in the show notes if you want to go look at them. Or you can just go Google the Game Awards and look through everything. So thank you for listening. Thank you for coming along to this solo podcast of mine. If you want to follow me, you can find me on mastodon.scot and on Twitter as the Scotbot. I'm probably posting more on Mastodon than I am on Twitter. I still technically exist on Twitter, but more because there's a few people that still haven't moved off Twitter, and I want to follow their stuff. That's basically it. I use it basically just for farming game stuff now. You can follow the podcast on Tumblr and also on Twitter at THSPod. You can find links to everything related to the podcast and also a feedback form at harvestseason.club. So if you want to let us know anything, you can do it there. In those links, there's also a link to our Patreon, patreon.com/thspod, where you can support me and the podcast. And you can also get access to our Slack, which has a bunch of interesting conversation and some fun people, and also bonus episodes of the podcast. We have just released an episode about the Pokemon DLC, the first DLC. I did that with Micah. We released that last week. And there'll be more coming up soon. We still have 3 episodes to come out this year. If you sign up to the Patreon, you can get all the back catalogue as well, which is roughly 2 episodes a month for 3 years now, I think. Is that how long I've been doing the Patreon? Something like that. So you get all that. So thank you all for listening. Thank you, me, for joining me. And until next time, farmers, have a good harvest. The Harvest Season is created by Al McKinley, with support from our patrons, including our pro farmers, Kevin, Stuart, and Elisa. Our art is done by Micah the Brave, and our music is done by Nick Burgess. Feel free to visit our website, harvestseason.club, for show notes and links to things we discussed in this episode.